This week we're taking a look at more homebrewed dark fantasy ideas that might be used in your dark fantasy campaign and reacting to how we might be able to improve these. My name is Ben Byrne and this is part 2 of reacting to dark fantasy homebrew. All right, Youngblood XP's Hunt Domain Cleric. Most other cleric domains often focus on healing the weak and downtrodden, while clerics of the Hunt are typically focused on their love of nature, tracking, survival, and hunting. I really liked the concept of the Hunt Domain Cleric when I first looked at it. The Nature Domain feels really druidic. This feels, having read through it, a lot more like a Ranger Cleric, because the Cleric kind of tries to be a virtuous, holy version of each other class. You've got the War Domain Cleric for the Fighter. You've got the Knowledge Domain Cleric for the Wizard. I think there's an Arcana Domain Cleric that might be a Grimhollow one, specifically the Eldritch Domain, I think it's called. And what I really like about it is a cleric that worships a god like Artemis from Greek mythology. A Chardalon's Stride. I don't recognize that. Conjure Volley and Steel Wind Strike. Again, I don't recognize those, but often my rangers don't get to having 5th level spells. I like the Natural Predator. I like the climbing one, and I like getting more speed. The Heavy Armor didn't make as much sense to me, because when you look at the monk that gets that speed buff as well, and I think a barbarian gets that speed buff, it's usually based on the idea that they're not wearing heavy armor, that they're much more comfortable kind of being light on their feet. And so having a speed of like 40 feet, 35 feet if you're a dwarf or something, just didn't make quite as much sense to me, being proficient with heavy armor as well. I also don't see the need for expertise to be provided on the survival, animal handling, perception, nature, or stealth are not proficiencies that a cleric would naturally have. They don't need that buff to expertise. Just having proficiency, I think, is enough. And it also doesn't really make sense to me that they would have stealth and access to heavy armor, because most heavy armor, if not all heavy armor, gives you a disadvantage to your stealth checks. Channel Divinity Mark, 2nd level Hunt Domain feature. This I'm not in love with, I'm gonna be honest, because it just feels like Hunter's Mark put into a Channel Divinity. Hunter's Mark is already a spell that the Hunt Cleric gets access to, so it sort of feels just like an extra use of Hunter's Mark. I would perhaps change it so that this Channel Divinity allows a Hunter's Mark that the whole party can benefit from. So maybe if the cleric could, as an action instead of a bonus action, mark a target, and therefore every party member that attacks that creature until the end of the cleric's next turn, every attack adds plus 1d6 to the damage. Maybe every creature has advantage on attacks against it, like pack tactics. Maybe one or the other of those would work really well. I think it fits better with the cleric, and it also makes it more than just an extra use of Hunter's Mark. Improved strikes. Your weapon attacks count as magical for overcoming resistances and immunities, and if you make a weapon attack on your turn, you can attack twice instead of once. I think it works, especially for like hunting. You know, a lot of stuff gets resistance to mundane damage early on, and attacking twice definitely incentivizes the cleric to use their melee weapon attacks as opposed to using their spells all the time. I like the fact that it's magical damage instead, overcoming resistances and immunities. Bloodlust, 8th level Hunt Domain feature. When you deal damage to a creature, you can use a bonus action to heal either yourself or an ally within 60 feet of you, an amount equal to the damage dealt. You can use this ability a number of times a day equal to your proficiency bonus. Most character-facing abilities, most player-facing abilities won't say once per day, unless maybe it's a magic item. They'll say this feature can be used a number of times equal to X and recharges when they do a short rest or a long rest. And yeah, I like that. I like it. Ties into the cleric's healing ability. Wouldn't it be cool if it had some sort of smite? This also has no range associated with it with the creature, so it does have kind of a bit of a wishy-washy range band. I would be trying to restructure this as much as possible so that this cleric was encouraged to use their weapon attacks instead of their spells as much as possible, and that their spells become more about supplementing their weapon attacks like what a ranger does. So your Hunter's Mark supplements your weapon attacks. Thrill of the Hunt is the last one for this subclass. 17th level, you become a true avatar of your deity and you gain additional abilities. You have resistance to all damage done by beasts and lycanthropes. When you use your Channel Divinity, you can mark 2 creatures or or objects at once. In addition, you can use a bonus action to assess your enemy and you instantly know one of their damage vulnerabilities or immunities. You can also deal an additional 1d6 magical piercing damage to that enemy. I wonder why they've chosen to tie the abilities to the proficiency bonus instead of the wisdom modifier. 5e in general's design philosophy has kind of changed a little bit. It used to very much tie it to characters, ability score, bonuses. Now it's tying it more so to the proficiency bonus. I suppose that's more consistent, but I kind of like it being tied to the ability score bonus instead, personally. I think this is really cool overall. I just want to make that really clear. I don't think it's overpowered in any way whatsoever. If anything, I think it's underpowered. So I think that any changes that I would make would be targeted towards trying to lean into the hunting theme a little bit more and looking at the abilities that are being given to this subclass in a way that they synergize with each other a little bit better. This is kind of the ranger we have at home, but a lot of the cleric subclasses are like that. The war domain cleric is the paladin we have at home. The knowledge domain cleric, or whatever it's called, the research domain, kind of is the wizard we have at home. Like, that's kind of the cleric's lot in life outside of the more unique domains such as the life domain, which does healing the best in the game. So thank you, Youngblood XP, for sharing that. Primble Broder's Potion Guide, as amazing as I genuinely think it is, I don't think a lot of players will use it because it's so in-depth. I think you have to have a specific type of table to get a lot of use out of this. This is very well written. I loved how this was laid out as well. Harvesting components. During a long short rest, a day's travel, you can search for exotic plants nearby. Choose a plant from the potion and oil table that is in your current region. Make a survival check to go find it. Roll a d4 to see how much you harvest. So that's one kind of new mechanic that's being introduced here, is harvesting components, which is cool. It's a cool exploration style mechanic. Brewing potions, so crafting is being added here. Crafting other items. All right, crafting things such as paste, plasters, and ointments. My immediate reaction to this is too crunchy for 5e. I again love it in concept. It feels very Witcher to me, but it does feel very like, you know, if you want to make these specific things, you need to know how to make these specific things with the specific materials they're made out of. And then toxicity. As you and your compatriots subject themselves to more and more magical effects, the risks of the potion effects reacting poorly or worse in one's body can have a minor and to extreme negative effect. You take more than 2 potions before a long rest, you must take a constitution saving throw increased by the base number of potions drank and their rarity. If you fail, roll a d8 to determine the effect of the toxicity table. Base DC 8 plus number of potions drank plus highest rarity potion. I like that. I think that's cool for generating a DC. I don't know how rare the potions go, but when I read this, I assume it's kind of between 1 and 5, which means that the DC most commonly would be like between 11 and 15, I suppose, or maybe higher, depending on how many potions that were drunk. Toxicity table. I did love some of these. Your eyes secrete a thick, cloudy fluid veined with neon color. You become blinded. Gross. You can repeat the saving throw at the end of every hour, ending the effects on your turn. So you get conjunctivitis. Great. Your thinking slows on a 6 and you feel strange liquid sloshing within your skull. That's just me most of the time, honestly. Alchemist supplies require a set of tools for crafting medicine and brewing. New tools. That's kind of my standing like feedback for this is like, it's all great. It's all too much, but your table might love it. And by yours, I don't just mean Death fans. I mean, any table might love it if they want this kind of crunchiness introduced into 5e. The one other like problem that this potentially creates is like one player kind of taking a lot of time of the session. The DM's gonna need to be like very quick back and forth. New feats. All right. New feat, Poisoner. If you spend 4 hours with a poison using an alchemist kit, you can increase its potency. The affected poison's DC increases by 1, and you can re-roll all ones on the damage dice of the poisons that deal damage. I think I had a problem with it being an alchemist kit, because then do you need proficiency with an alchemist kit and a poisoner's kit to be able to increase the poison's effect? But it also kind of leans into that idea where Grimhollow's crafting system uses lots of different types of checks that one character isn't necessarily going to be proficient in all of to encourage kind of teamwork or seeking out experts in a village. So maybe that works for me. Poisons ignore resistance to poison damage, an advantage to saves against poisons, and creatures normally immune to poisons instead have resistance to your poisons and gain advantage. Blah, 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 blah. I generally don't like abilities which overcome resistances or immunities unless it's to mundane damage. I don't like the idea of like, your fire is so hot, even a fire elemental takes damage from it. An undead creature is immune to poison because poisons attack living tissue. That's always been my assumption. They stop a heart from beating, they cause necrosis, and these are generally things that undead creatures don't have to worry about. But an undead creature is sustained through magic, in theory. Maybe allowing poisons to do different types of damage instead. You can create a poison that does acid damage, or a poison that does fire damage because it's like a combustible thing. New feat, Apothecary. Prerequisite, proficiency with herbalism and poisonous kit. When you take this feat, you become proficient with alchemist supplies. I wonder if this feat, instead of requiring herbalism or poisonous kit as a prerequisite, could instead just provide proficiency in herbalism, poisoners, or alchemist supplies so that any character who doesn't already have proficiency in those things can gain proficiency in those things and then become a poisoner or a potion brewer. So that a wizard who doesn't get herbalism supplies or alchemist kit, but wants to be this kind of witch doctor style character, can gain proficiency to be able to start to brew potions. Or a fighter that wants to brew blade oils to go after certain types of monsters can gain proficiency with an alchemist supplies to be able to brew those things. Rules for changing seasons and harvesting. Man, this stuff is intense. DC to harvest as follow. DC 10, plentiful, uncommon, rare. Right, okay. Man, this goes deep. It gives agency to the player to be able to choose what it is they want to try and find. They can say, I want to try find this plant because I know it has this effect. And if you give this rarity table to the players instead and like give it to them as a handout that they can basically keep with their character sheet so that their character knows how to make these things, or maybe it's a living document and they can discover formulas by playing the game, and then every time they discover a formula in game, the GM adds it to the living document that the player already has so that they can build out their understanding of what these different plants do and what the DC to harvest it is and what the amount needed is. The player can make a choice and be like, I am looking for Drazellas because I want to make some Draz juice. We got drinks this Friday and Draz juice is what we love to drink. And they know that they've got to make a DC 16 check to try to find it. The point is they're making a choice. They're making choices to try to harvest like a specific type of plant. They're curating the plants that they have and then using those plants to construct the potions. Yeah, so I like this in concept. It's very deep. It's going to make some players very, very happy. Both of these homebrews were submitted from the Ghostfire Gaming Discord community. If you want to join the Discord, get your hands on those homebrews, or just join the conversation, there will be a link in the description down below. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to join the campaign. Let us know if you want to see more of these React style videos from this channel. If you enjoyed this video, you can find part 1 here of reacting to our Discord community's homebrews for your Dark Fantasy campaign. Or you can find 4 entirely new monsters in this video here, which I designed myself.